Hello, this is Luana, and welcome to Strategic Positioning God's Way. Strategic Positioning God's Way. I am excited to be joining you here on Ash Wednesday as well as Black History Month. And today we are going to be talking about crossing boundaries, the legacy of Queen Sheba. And I was praying about what would be a great kind of pause as we're celebrating Black History Month. And what are some biblical lessons that we can learn from a woman who was of Cushite descent, considered Nubian, from Sheba, so her lineage having an African heritage? What lessons could we learn from this biblical figure and her boldness when she elected to approach King Solomon? And we talk about women today are in the position to really radicalize shifts in our society, through our community, our nations. We are positioned like no other time before to be a voice of reason, a voice of change, a voice of community. But it requires a certain level of boldness. We can't stay in our box and just hope things will happen. We can't just stand on the shoreline looking, having a vision of what could be, or maybe even having an inkling of curiosity, but not willing to dip our feet in the water. And Queen of Sheba took a very, very bold approach. I mean, this is a woman who was from also a very powerful nation, a ruler of a very powerful nation. They were powerful in commerce and trade. And she approached King Solomon, who was the king of Israel, and had political power and religious power. And they weren't what I would call necessarily allies, but they coexisted during that point in time in history as power seats, right, in their place in the world. And to relate that back to us, especially women of color, whether we are from different ethnic backgrounds, uh, nationalities, we have our different seats of power that when we come together collectively can again be catalysts for change, catalysts for enlightenment, catalysts for bridge building. And so I want to take the story of the Queen of Sheba, and I'm coming from Kings. I'll put this up here, Kings 10, 1 through 13. And I'm gonna read this to you, and we're gonna dissect it a little bit. And if we have time, we may go into Second Chronicles. But right now, we're just gonna sit into her visit with King Solomon. And sometimes you may find yourself in a position where God is prompting you to go and do something, and you're a little concerned because now you have to navigate perhaps gender biases, cultural biases, racial biases and prejudices and discriminations. And it's like, how do I do this? How do I step into a place where I am very different and I'm going to command an audience? So let's dissect this a little bit. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon, remember, Solomon was known for his wisdom, being the wisest man that ever lived, and his relationship to the Lord, she came to test Solomon with hard questions. So she heard about this. And rather than jumping on the bandwagon and singing King Solomon praises, she's like, I need to see for myself. I need to validate for myself. Is he who everyone is proclaiming him to be? And I'm going to do so by making sure that I'm coming prepared with certain questions. So think about that. When we are looking to create relationship or dialogue or discourse with someone, we don't want to just go about it haphazardly or willy-nilly. We want to be prepared. So this specifically says she came to test Solomon with hard questions, meaning she had given some clear thought. strategically mapping out the questions that she wanted to ask. So she had intention behind her actions. So when we think about, again, building relationships, being bridge builders, seeking to understand, are we doing so with intentionality, or are we just kind of, flying by the seat of our pants and seeing what sticks? It then says, verse 2, arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan, with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, and precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Now, I want to stop right there because, again, it says she came bringing something. She came bringing gifts. And when we think about culturally, it is a good etiquette, if you will, to when you're going to someone's home, going to meet someone for the first time, right? You have a purpose to bring something, to come bearing gifts of sorts. You would never think of going to another nation without bringing something. Our diplomats still do that today. We may have come up in households that where we've been told, don't go to someone's house empty-handed. Bring them something. Bring them flowers. Bring them a plant. Bring some dessert. Bring something, right? And that's symbolic of respect. So again, this is a great nation coming to a great nation, and it says, she arrived at Jerusalem with a very great caravan, with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, precious stones. And remember, I said they were a wealth capital. She came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. So this tells you this wasn't just I'm popping in, I'm popping out. She was probably there for several days, maybe weeks, maybe even months at a time. We don't know how long she was there, but she was there for some deep conversation, some dialogue, possibly even debating back and forth. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. I want to pause right there because there was recently on the news, and I'm going to leave this political official nameless, but he was challenged about one of his beliefs, and he could not answer. And the member of the House of Representatives, the Senate committee rather, was telling him, you're bringing something to the table, but you should be able to answer what it is that you say that you stand for. You should be able to clearly articulate this thing that you say that you believe in. But here with Queen of Sheba, when she spoke to the king, it said that he answered all her questions and nothing was too hard for him to explain to her. So again, it's not just, I'm not just answering, but I'm certain when it says explain that she was doing some probing, right? So I don't know how many of you just have sat in this, but there's a lot of layers when it comes to communicating, leadership, negotiation, right? Leveraging. When the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon in the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. So there was just a beautiful display of pageantry around him and how he lived. And it overwhelmed her. Again, this is her first time being there. She said to the king, the report I heard in my own country, because sometimes we hear things about another person, another community, another situation, right? We hear these reports, these murmurs, the gossiping, and we draw conclusions. And those conclusions may be right or they could be wrong, right? Because we're not getting it straight from the source. We're getting it from someone's experience, someone's touch point in their interpretation or translation. And depending on how far removed they are from the original source, we may not be getting the full extent of the story. And she said to the king, the report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. So she had to verify. She heard it. It sounded good, but she was probably thinking, maybe a little bit too good to be true. And now as that businesswoman, that entrepreneur, out there, or maybe even you're in corporate, and you hear your reputation precedes you, right? People may hear about you, or they may see certain things on social media, and they want to verify, right? They want to, they want to confirm and verify that you are who you say you are. And we shouldn't be offended by that. But some people, they get offended. How dare they ask me about myself, about what I've done? But King Solomon didn't take offense. Obviously, if they had this great conversation and discourse and probably debate and explanations going back and forth, that he was welcoming and accepting of it. And that also speaks to the level of respect in which she came and the level of respect that he gave to be patient and, again, have this conversation. Have there ever been times where people want to verify who you are and who you say you are in your business, and you may feel yourself getting a little ruffled, right? How dare they ask me? Well, why shouldn't they? I mean, if you are who you say you are, if you can do the things that you say you can do, yes, then it should be no problem. She said, but when she heard these things and she validated, she goes, yes, they are true. She said, but I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. It was just so preposterous. She's like, it's too remarkable to be true. But I'm hearing it so much. I've got to come and see for myself. And then it says, indeed, not even half was told to me. In wisdom and wealth, you have far exceeded the report I've heard. Remember, King Solomon was the richest man and the wisest man that had ever lived. So she's hearing all of these things, but she said to him, admitting to him, I heard only in part, but my eyes and what I've heard shows me far more than they ever imagined. And she said, you have far exceeded the report that I heard. Now think about that someone comes and they vet you. She's vetting him basically. And they look and they think, wow, you are far more than what I heard. Not only are you who they say you are, but you are far more. You are above and beyond my wildest expectations. What a compliment. And then she says, how happy your people must be. How happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne in Israel. So now she's celebrating, honoring his God, recognizing that in his power seat and looking and watching. Remember, she's watching the array of people around him. She's probably seeing the interchange and how he is communicating with them, how he's acting and behaving, how he's treating those that worked among him. And she's saying how happy they must be. So again, when people are watching you, what are they saying about you? What do your actions say about how you treat others in equal positions of authority? Perhaps those that are in other levels of your influence. How are you treating them? How are you showing up? What are people seeing? And is what they're seeing worthy of God's delight? And she's basically saying, how happy, how happy. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness. So because of all that she was seeing, she said, this is why God chose you. Because of your heart, because of your passion, because of your actions, because of your diligence, because of your commitment to God, your service to God and to those around you. That is why he delights in you. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices and precious stones. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. So keep in mind, there at that time, a lot of nations are going back and forth, seeing the king. They're having conversations, and many nations are bringing gifts. But they said the quantity, the amount, the quality of that she brought him, there had never been any and none since given to that magnitude. So that tells you strategically she went there again with something on her mind, with needing to verify, but she also had her own questions, which whatever they were, that she needed to have answers to. But she also had the foresight to say, you know what? I am going to come not bearing meager gifts, but I'm going to bring the king the best that my kingdom has to offer. I want to honor him. And we have to think about when we're doing business one with another, do we think about honoring that business relationship, honoring that partnership? How do we show up at the table? Or are we looking at what can I get, me, I want. But we're not thinking even before we ask, how can we be a gift to the one that we seek a gift from? And in her case, she wanted knowledge. She wanted to sponge off of King Solomon's wisdom. We'll be back in a moment while we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this delightful and empowering visit of Queen of Sheba with King Solomon. Goes on to say, Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and from there they brought great cargoes of algam wood and precious stones. The king used almug wood to make supports for the temple of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. So much algam wood has never been imported or seen since that day. I mean, think about that. So Sheba was known again as a very wealthy nation for its gems, for its commerce. Israel for its political dominance and religious dominance. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for. We're now in verse 13. Besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. So listen to that. Not only did she get the wisdom and knowledge, but obviously she asked for something else. So he gave her that. He gave her all that she asked for. Then he went into his own, right? His own treasury, his own bounty, his own stuff and things, and gave to her. I want you to just sit in that for a moment. You know, we're here talking about crossing boundaries, the legacy of Queen of Sheba. And let's package this a little bit. There are times when we're going to have conversations. We're going to have to go places where it's different, where people are different, attitudes are different, culture is different. And we have to be able to cross those boundaries in a way that allows our presence to be seen, to be heard, and to be accepted. So she was able to, as I mentioned earlier, cross those cultural boundaries, those national boundaries, and those gender boundaries. She came peer to peer, but in a way of respect, bringing him the best that her country had to offer. And I want you to think about when you're thinking about building business relationships or going into an area that you haven't been before and you're wondering, how do I navigate this? Well, let's first remember she was very strategic. And she was intentional. She knew why she wanted to go to vet him, but she also had questions of her own. And she made sure that she packaged it, that she was prepared. And then she said, well, I can't just show up empty-handed. I have to go with something of honor. So in this day and age, do you think about how do you honor those who you do business with? How do you show up? Do you show up empty-handed? Or are you looking at how can I honor you? How can I give unto you? Not just looking at what can I pull and milk from you, but how can I give back? And in doing so, he was honored by her seeing the God in his life, God's hand on his life. giving honor and glory to his God. And then in turn, Solomon gave her all that he asked. So imagine working with someone and them giving you all that you asked, and then tapping into their account and giving you even more. So he tapped into his bounty, his fullness, his abundance, his coffers, if you will, and gave her more. This can happen today. This mutual exchange, right? Creating the symbiotic relationship. Are you willing to cross those boundaries? Are you happy being in your box, only dealing with people who you look like you, think like you, talk like you? Are you willing to expand your boundaries, cross those borders, and see what's on the other side through the empowerment of Christ, through the guidance of the Holy Spirit, through a strategic lens at the right time? Because we often don't talk about timing. So it was the right time. And I'm certain there must have been back and forth communication. She didn't just show up unannounced. I mean, think about it. She's bringing a caravan of abundance to him. And you think about those days, even today, if you're bringing all of this, it's going to take, it's a logistical effort, right? It's a concentrated effort. And then working with the other powers to be to make sure that this meeting can occur at the right time and at the right place and space. I think we have a little bit more time. I'm going to try to go to this other Chronicles 9. We're just going to read just a little bit about this. You're going to hear some similarities. So, and let me put this here so you know where the reference point here. In Second Chronicles. Is that where I am? Yes. Second Chronicles 9. And we're going to go through 1 through 12. Okay, so you can follow along with me if you like. But let's, again, it's there's some overlap in the story, but I think that we have enough time to unpackage this. When the Queen of Sheba heard of Solomon's fame, she came to Jerusalem to test him with hard questions. Arriving with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Now, let's go a little. Did I do the wrong one? No, I did the right one. Hold on. I think I read. Let me go back. I think I read from Second Chronicles first instead of First Kings. Let's just double check here. My apologies. Okay, here we go. And they can be so much the same because they're very, very similar in perspective. Yes. Yeah. So they're almost identical in what they were saying. And again, it's talking about God's sovereignty, and because of God's love for Israel, he has made him king and maintained him for his justice and righteousness. So it's quite interesting that you have two books in the Bible that are almost identical in the way that they are written. I want to read this one part, and it's talking about King Solomon's splendor. It says, and this is out of First Kings. Second Chronicles 9:13. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues brought in by merchants and traders. Also, all the kings of Arabia and the governors of the territories brought gold and silver to Solomon. And, we talked about the abundance that Sheba brought to him. So he made 666 a year, and she brought him 120 talents. So almost a fourth of, well, actually a little less than a fourth of what he was making on an annual basis. So again, it just talks about the wealth exchange. And I want to pause right there. And when we're talking about wealth exchange and legacy in business partnership, wealth exchange is not just me providing a good and service and you giving me money. We know that that's how commerce works, right? Money moves when goods and services move. But the transfer of wealth was that knowledge transfer. The transfer of wealth was also that respect transfer. The transfer of wealth was building bridges and having that mutual respect, seeing each other as they are. Because as she said, I saw you. I heard, but now I can see. I heard in part, but now I see in whole. Don't you think he was saying the same thing about her? Don't you think he also did his homework to find out who she was? And when he saw that she came boldly, without hesitation, as a female from another country into his power seat of political dominance and religious presence, and came with confidence, don't you think that he also had a level of admiration for her? In business, we can build so many bridges if we take the time to first seek to understand. And then we in turn can be understood. And I believe that's what happened during this very monumental business exchange discourse between the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. That there was a time for them to listen, to learn, to agree, and in some cases disagree. But at the end of the day, there was understanding. There was such a respect that she was willing to bring part of her kingdom's wealth to him. But he in turn gave her part of what he had. And I think that's a lesson in how we do business, how we want to go forward, how we want to build relationships. To not just look at what's in it for me, but how can I seek to understand and to be understood? How can I bring something to the table that's of great value to me and be okay with bringing my best to the table? And be surprised and delighted when someone in turn gives us a piece of theirs, a piece of the best. What amazing dynamic relationships we can build if we came with just a different attitude, a different lens in how we do business. And there's so much more we can package with Queen of Sheba. But we're almost out of time, and I just wanted to come on today to encourage you to think about how you're doing business and how you're showing up, and are you prepared, and are you being intentional? Are you looking to come as a servant leader and seeking to understand, or are you just trying to just gain for the sake of gaining? Because in this case, I believe it was truly a win-win dialogue between the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon. If you'd like to be a guest on Strategic Positioning God's Way, I would love to have you and have a conversation. Send an email to Luana@BradfordGroupMTG.com with strategic in the subject line. Let's have a conversation and see where we can take this amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Strategic Positioning God's Way. I look forward to seeing you next week. And I just encourage you to be safe, be well. Until next time, bye for now. Strategic Positioning God's Way is all about positioning yourself financially in life and in business so that you can make a sustainable impact today, but also help to build legacy for tomorrow. You are built for wisdom and positioned for increase. Until next time, be safe, be well. Bye for now.